Live from Michigan City, Indiana, it's Long Arm TV Live with Jamie Wallen.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Quilters Apothecary. Today is one of those big bang for your bucks kind of days. So what we're actually going to be doing is about 2 tutorials in one. The first tutorial, as we go over this amazing border treatment, is how to properly baste for a quilt that's going to be hung or for a show quilt. I had a lot of people email after a few of our live feeds a few weeks ago and said, how do you do that? Because I had brought up that I had done that on something, but I had already done it before we started the video. So we're going to go over that first, and then we're going to go into this wonderful border treatment that I think you're absolutely going to love. And I know I say that every time, but hopefully you're loving every one of them. And it seems to right now kind of be Jamie's going crazy on the borders. I have another one that I'm going to want to be doing over the next few weeks for you, and that is going to be on a scallop border. So again, I am kind of going a little bit border crazy right now, but we'll get into some other stuff as we go. So again, thank you for joining us. It's wonderful to have you here in our studio and in your home. And it's wonderful to be a part of your lives as quilters and fellow artists. So number one, we're going to go ahead. Let's take a look at the actual design that we're going to be working on today. So the design that we're going to be working on, yes, the design that we're going to be working on is this guy right here. And I'm going to have Rich go in a little tighter on that so you can see what we're doing. And we're going to go over the whys and the instructional part of why it shows that for this particular border on this particular quilt. So this particular border treatment, this would be the center that would go out, and then of course it would mirror itself from the center and then go out the opposite way as well. And then what you get, of course, is this wonderful design right here. And we can get a little bit more of a visual. Let's first see the cornerstone, Rich. So there's our cornerstone, and I did put a cornerstone in this particular quilt, and because I didn't want to deal with the corner, and that's just a nice way to do that. And then also, let's see from the center out if we can get that shot up in here. So that's actually the design that we are going to be doing today. So since it's a long one, it's going to be about an hour long, and then we'll have questions afterwards. I think it's time. Let's get started with the instructions. Okay, so let's take a minute and kind of walk through what we have here. We have this amazing quilt by Alma, and what we're going to do with it is a border treatment, which is what today's tutorial is going to be on. And then throughout the next weeks, I'm actually going to do a couple more tutorials on how I would handle things such as the portrait of the fox and the bear and the other things that she's added in. We're going to see how we can handle that. One of the challenges with this quilt, because she is going to hang this quilt, this is not a bed quilt. So one of the challenges is to throw off the look of squares, because this quilt is made up of different size squares to make this beautiful wildlife quilt. The other challenge is that it's in a lot of muted colors. You have these muted blues and greens, and the shock of color really is the red and the gold and the fox. And so that's kind of where we're going to be getting any type of color. So since she's going to hang this and she's going to want this for a display quilt, what I decided to do, and I got permission to do in the border, is I'm going to be using a gold metallic in the border. So that's number one, going to solve the problem of not over dulling the quilt so that you don't have a lot to look at. The metallic is going to kind of make it pop, and it's going to draw the eye to the quilt itself, and it's going to add a little bit of interest. Now, the next thing, which was a little challenging, I auditioned some different border treatments to do in this 5-inch border. And what I found for myself, because of the squares that are already in here, is that some of my traditional, like I wouldn't do an Amish feather in the border because that just wouldn't work. It would throw off the look. It doesn't go with the quilt. So what I really wanted to focus on was some sort of very cool frame. And I thought about using some of the mystical dimensional rulers and doing something like that, but that just didn't feel right. That was a little too kitschy for this particular quilt. Um, so what I chose to do instead was to go ahead and make a lattice border. But because of the straight lines, I didn't want to do 45-degree lattice on squares because there's already so many square things going on with this quilt. So what I chose to do instead was, as pictured on the screen right now, would be the 45-degree with a curve, but I'm going to do it as a lattice work in the center of this border. So I'm going to go up measurement, and I'm going to make a little bit of free space here and then come down, taking into account the binding, and then I'm going to put that curved lattice right in the middle here. So that's kind of the design direction we're going to be going. Now that this is loaded on, since this is going to be hung mostly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to want to make real sure, since it's not going on a bed, that these seams are straight. And normally with a regular bed quilt or a regular quilt, what I would do is I would just baste across the top. But for a quilt like this that's going to hang, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use my channel locks, and I'm first going to go in and I'm going to baste a straight line with my channel locks, a little bit longer, so that way I know it's perfectly straight and I don't have to mess too much as I'm doing my actual ditch. So then I'm going to go in and I'm going to go ahead and ditch this and take out the basting as I go. That way I know that this is going to be perfectly straight, because the line that I want to be perfectly straight is not this outer edge like I normally would do. The line that I want to be perfectly straight would be this border. That also does mean that the side borders are going to be turned. So I will be turning this quilt to do the side borders as I work down the quilt and do the body of the quilt. So once I finish this whole quilt, top border, body, and then come down and do the bottom border, then I will take it off the frame and I will go ahead and I will turn the quilt, and I'll do then the side borders as the top and bottom border, so that I can do it in one fell swoop. And that's simply because of the this design is going to have a middle focus. So it's going to work from the corners into the middle. And since we're going to do that, I just figured that for this particular quilt, I want to make sure to have it perfect. So I'm going to do my rare turn the quilt to do the side borders. So the very first thing we'll do, and we'll go ahead and get started, is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to baste this ditch first. Here I went ahead and I started from the center of my border, locked my stitches, and I started this way. And you know, I'm ditching this in invisible, but my basting, I actually did invisible thread to baste it to here, and then I changed to a colored thread so that way it's going to be easier to take out as I actually do the ditch work. So now what I'm going to do, I have my machine at 5 stitches per inch. I have my channel lock completely locked so it's not going to move forward or back, and I'm just going to use my ruler, and I'm going to take my time, and I'm going to make sure that I'm right on that ditch, as close as I can possibly be. And so the whole point of this is to make sure to be able to shift that ditch to keep a nice straight line, because the whole point of doing the ditch first is to make sure that we have a straight line. So now that's all good. Come up there, and again, it's a little bit that takes a little extra time, but for a quilt that's going to be hanging or for a show quilt, this is the time you want to take. Get right up on there. I'm going to go all the way down to the edge, and then I'm going to start in the middle and work my way the opposite way. So I came all the way down with my basting stitch, and I actually went over the edge just a little bit by about an inch. And again, I'm at 5 stitches per inch. And the one thing that I want to say is I made sure to put, before I started, a little bit of adhesive or whatever you like to use for the back of your ruler. Because when I am working this ditch, rather than manipulating using the ruler and everything, what I am going to do is when this ruler is down here, and I want to keep it in the ditch, I actually pull my ruler back and forth just to control whether or not my needle is hitting that ditch. And we'll get some close-ups over when we do the other side just to kind of explain that a little bit better. So now here is my center over there. We have locked our stitches and we're going to come back the other way. And what I want to do again is as I am basting the ditch here, notice that my adhesive, I'm going to be controlling that fabric just like this. So I'm pulling my ruler back and forth to make sure that my needle is right in that ditch. So I'm going to line that up. Start my machine. And again, this is not a time you would be using cruise mode. So as I go down, and if I have to shift at all, then I would just adjust my ruler and pull it right on the fabric. Stop, reposition. I'm going to reline that up. And again, I want to make sure that it's in a nice straight line. So I keep that right in the ditch. And again, remember, this is when I would use an oddball color of thread, either a really light, if it's on a dark fabric, or a really dark, so that way, as I go ahead and do the actual ditching, then I can go ahead and remove the stitches as I come to it, as you're going to see in the next section. So I'm going to bring this down, and I'm going to work my way all the way to the end. At this point, what I've done is I went ahead, I changed over to my invisible thread, I switched my stitches, and that's the thing you want to make sure you do. I went back to 12 stitches per inch, and I actually went over here and I started over here and I came straight across because on this border design, I'm actually going to make cornerstones. So I'm going to go ahead and I went ahead and did my straight work all the way to here, and now I'm to here. And as I'm working, as you're going to see, I just take out about 6 or 7 inches of my basting stitches as I go. So I've taken my basting stitches out to here, and so now I'm going to work my way over to there. And I did switch to my Ditcher 4, which is a little bit of a shorter ditch because I wanted to not go as far, because I want to keep it as stable and perfect as possible. Still doing the same thing, kind of shifting my ruler with a little bit of the sticky on the back to keep me directly in that ditch with the invisible thread. And I'm just going to take my time. Now when I'm doing regular custom, obviously I'm not going to be moving that slow to do my ditch work. This is more for show custom or a little more high-end custom when I really want to be right in that ditch. Okay, so now I'm about a ½ an inch away from the thread that I've taken out, and I keep a tail on here, and I don't snip my bobbin thread, I just go ahead and I just kind of clip it along. Again, this is another reason I absolutely love my Karen Buckley scissors. And I just pull, and again, like I said, I'm not snipping these tails of the bobbin until I get a nice length, and then I do it because I don't want refuge under my quilt to get sewn in. I want to make sure not to keep snipping little pieces of the bobbin thread as I go. I want to make sure to get rid of that bobbin thread and pull it up to the top as I go. And I just went about 6 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and snip that. And now I'm going to quilt over to there, and then I will keep repeating that all the way down the ditch. And again, because I'm doing a cornerstone here, I'm going to go ahead with my channel lock and go straight across, lock my stitches, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the sides within my throat space. Okay, now I'm coming down the side and I've gone to the corner, I've locked my stitches. I am not basting this down because I actually have the roller holding it stable. So I only worry about basting across the top. So I'm going to line that up. And I'm first going to go up because I'm doing a cornerstone. And I have my vertical channel lock on. Going to come back down. And then reline up my ruler. And now, of course, I'm going to come right down this stitch. All the way down within my throat space. Now we're over to the other side. now that we have our Okay, so there were some, and my mic's hot, is that correct, Rich? Okay, so we had a few questions that I kind of want to cover real quick. Do you have to baste this first? Because what I did was I basted this ditch first. The reason that I basted this ditch first before I actually ditched it is to keep it stable for me and on this quilt because she wants it to hang perfectly straight. And so I want to make sure that the seam is perfectly straight, which is why I did the ditch first here rather than up here. Did I need to baste it? I guess you wouldn't need to baste it, but I gotta tell you, my eyes are not as good as they used to be. And so for me, that just kind of is that precursor. It takes me 5 minutes, as you saw, to go ahead and just put a basting stitch in there with my channel locks. And then when I go back to actually ditch it, everything is stable and everything is safe. And that seems like an extra step for a lot of people. I realize that you don't have to do it then if it's a pain for you. I just like to do it because again, my eyesight is not what it used to be, and that just helps me. So there we go.
Jamie, Mary would like to know, are you basting the sides?
Yes, I am basting the sides as I go down. In fact, that's what no, I'm sorry. I didn't baste the sides. And the reason I didn't have to baste the sides is because my quilt is on a roller. So the quilt being on a roller and snug the way that it should be, it's keeping the sides pretty stable. So they're pretty well in shape, right? They're going to stay straight. What wouldn't be straight is my top here. When the quilt is just laying up, of course, I didn't want to do this first. I wanted to make sure that this was the straight. So I did not pre-base my sides. I just went ahead and ditched it because everything was stable and held stable and it was tight enough. Okay. Yep. Border and seam all ditched across horizontally and on both sides. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead now and do our outer edge. So now I'm simply going to go along. I'm going to change my stitch length to 5 stitches per inch. And go along and base that outer edge so that's nice and stable all the way down to the corner. And then I'll come back to the center and do it all the way back. Now, what I'm doing as well is I am pushing up here. So notice that what I'm not doing is pulling away because I don't want to work fullness over this way. I'm actually kind of working my fullness in as I go. Now, and if I notice that I'm starting to get any fullness, what I'll actually do is I'll push down on this side just to kind of balance it out a little bit. Just like that. So I'll push down, just like this, and what that will do is that will distribute that fullness throughout. Now she pieced a pretty straight quilt, so I'm very lucky with this particular piece. Come down, and remember I don't go down the sides right now. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to lock my stitches, and actually I'm going to just go ahead, go to 12, so they are locked, go back, go to 5, and now I'm going to go back to the center and I'm going to work the opposite way. Okay, so now I've locked my stitches in the center, and now I'm going to repeat that process all the way over to the left. And again, the one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to push my fullness out this way. I actually want to bring my fullness in. Now, again, the thing to remember here, and I want to be very clear about this, because what's going to happen, especially with new quilters, is you will assume that your border is perfect, in this case, 5 inches. But if you have a new piecer, What it might be is it might be 5¼ inches, and so you may be basting and adding a 1/4 inch to the base. That's another reason that I like using my channel locks when I'm doing a special quilt like this, is I do have just a little bit of excess on this side of the border, and rather than staying on the edge, I want to make sure to push all that fullness up so that I don't get bunching down here. And then when I trim the quilt, what'll happen is then I make sure to trim it. And then I know that this is exactly the measurement that it's supposed to be, rather than it's one measurement down at one end and the other, another measurement down at the other. Now I am down to this end, and I'm going to go all the way out to the edge. Get my little stabilizing pin out of the way. Come back. I'm going to go ahead, change that to 12 stitches per inch, not 112. 12. Okay, and I'll lock those stitches. And now what I'm going to do is I just come in a little ways, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set my vertical channel lock, and I'm going to come down the, I believe that would be the Y axis. Is that correct? So the Y axis would be down this way. We always call the horizontal across the table the X, and then this would be the Y. Okay, so now we're going to go down the side. I've got my channel lock. And I'm just within about 1/8 of an inch of the edge of that quilt. Now, I am going against my first rule on this first throat space. And that rule would be normally when I baste the edge, I baste from the bottom up. But I'm actually going to go against that just for this part right here. And then on my second roll, then I'm going to start doing that. But in the midst of that, I would add that what I am doing is I'm not pushing fullness down. I'm making sure to move any fullness that I have up into the basting. And if you noticed, what I did was I did not go back to basting stitches. So let me go back to the 5 stitches per inch rather than 12. Okay, so now I'm at the bottom of my throat space. I'm going to do the other side, and then it's going to be time to mark the first parts of my border. We have our ditch between our body and the border of the quilt. We have our basting on the outer edge all the way around within the throat space. And of course I've stitched out, when I did the ditch work, my cornerstones. And so now we're down to going ahead to mark this particular border. So for the border treatment that we showed at the beginning, what we're going to be doing is I am going to measure, because I want a border inside of a border. So what I'm going to do is I want, even from the cornerstone out, 1/2 of an inch. So I'm going to find my 1/2 of an inch, line that up, give myself a chalk line, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go 1/2 of an inch up, all the way across between the body and border seam. And you can use whatever marking tool that you like to use. Of course, I like to use my Bowen, and I'm using the thicker one rather than the thin one today. Now again, I go almost up to the cornerstone, and then I'm going to come down the side and do my 1/2 inch away from the cornerstone. Now what I'm going to do is come down from the top, and instead of going a 1/2 inch down, we want to take into account our 1/4 inch for our binding. So we're actually going to go 3/4 of an inch down. So I line that up, and by the way, my 3/4 inch lines up on that basting stitch that went across the top, not on the edge of the fabric. There's a difference, because if my fabric is cattywampus, that's going to give me a cattywampus line. So I want to make sure to put that line on my stitching line that I used my channel lock for. And at 3/4 of an inch. Again, that takes into account my 1/4 inch binding to keep that border looking balanced. And God help me remember that when I go to the other edge of the border. That's why it's always good to take pictures with your phone if you're working on a border. And again, I've got that 3/4 inch line on the basting line. That way, if it takes a while to get down to the bottom of a quilt, you can remember what you did at the top. Some of the little intricacies. Okay, so now we have that, and we already have our center line right there. Let me darken that a little bit. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to do our divisions. I want to mark divisions on this particular border treatment. Let me add a little addendum to this. So Rich just mentioned to me, could you also have started from the edge of the border, I'm sorry, between the border and body of the quilt, and measured up to get the line that you chose to put right here? Absolutely, you could have done that. Instead of measuring down this way, you could have measured up. And being a math guy, he feels that that would give you a little bit more of a perfect rectangle shape. So there is another option for you to do that. Now I just double checked and everything was perfectly square, I guess because I've been doing it for so long. But that does make sense what he says. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to stitch out the rectangle first. I'm using a metallic thread to make it pop. And again, I am going to take my ditch ruler and line it up so that it is right at the 1/4 inch because of my 1/4 inch hopping foot, and at least down this side against that cornerstone. That's how I'm going to go ahead and quilt it, as I want that to be my guide rather than my quilt mark. I use my quilt mark as kind of a guide, but it's not the law. So just keep that in mind. And then I'm going to turn my ruler. Same thing, I'm going to line that up. Go to a 1/4 inch, which is going to give me a 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to go across. Now remember, I like to thicken my line when I'm doing a fancy border like this, so I'm going to go over, back, and I like to have something just a little bit sticky on the back of my ruler so that my line stays as close to being dead on as I can to make it nice and bold. And then I'm going to do this all the way across and all the way around the top. Now when I do get down to the other end, what I will do is I will cut my thread and I'll come back and I will start up here and I'll go over and down. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, now that we have our whole border, um, the base done and the space done, now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how to mark for our curved 45-degree crosshatch. What I've done so far is I've marked the right side from the middle of the border out, but of course what I did was I started at the end and marked my way in, as you're going to see when we mark this side. So everything works from the edge here that we've just created with the metallic thread into the center, and then the oddball shape is going to be in the center. That way it looks planned. So what I've done for my measurement, this is almost exactly 4 inches. So the one thing I want to stress is when we're doing this design, you either would do that measurement, so almost 4 inches, or you could cut it in half, so maybe 2 inches, which is going to give you more of a narrow design. But I'm going to go with 4 inches because I want something a little more open. And I am going to use, to put my registration lines in, our square from our shape series. And I've got my 4-inch square here so that just makes it a lot easier. I could use my regular ruler, but I find that this is just a little easier to kind of square everything up and make sure that I get my marks right. So what I'm going to do is take that all the way to the edge, line it up. And what I'm doing is I'm making sure that the bottom of the square here goes right to the bottom of the seam. That way I know that everything is parallel. So this top mark matches the bottom mark. And where I'm putting my registration mark is right on the line here. Then I'm just going to work my way all the way into the middle, line that up, take that down, up, down, line it up, go down, and I'm using my Bowen, of course, again, my wide Bowen, which is my favorite marking tool. Line it up, down. But the thing to remember if you do go into the Bowen marking tools is I only use white on color. And we have a whole marking tool tutorial up on YouTube, so check that out. That goes over everything you really kind of need to know and what to avoid. Down, up, down. So now those marks are done. So now here I am in the middle, so we're going to come and get a little bit closer here. So in the center here, what I want to do is I want to verify that I have the right mark in the middle. It's not a big deal. You can be a little bit off, but I just want to make sure that I'm as close to being on as I can. And let me see, what I have is it's almost 5 inches there. So that's the difference between the 4 inches. And that's what I mean. Everything is 4 inches all the way in, and then the center one is going to be the oddball, and it's 5 inches. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I locate that right in the center. And before, my mark had been about 1/4 of an inch off. So I just want to make sure that I see the exact middle. Things change as you mark, and then you have to make a little bit of an adjustment. So now I have that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get my exact measurement. And my exact measurement on this particular border, the inside portion here, is actually just a little bit under 4. So it's about 3 3/4. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to center that. Make sure that that's center, and I'm just going to put little center divots. And you can see I did that on this side because I want a center line to use just for reference for this particular design. So I'm going to go down the edge side of the border, and I'm going to just locate the center, balance that out, that, slide down, locate the center, make sure it's centered. So I have a little bit hanging over here and here, so that way I know that I'm as centered as I can possibly be. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead, grab my long ruler, line that up all the way across, and for that center line I want something that's a little more fine, and so I'm going to go with my Bowen Fine, and I'm going to give myself a nice fine line right through the center, slide it down, make sure that it meets up with the line that I have on the other side that I completed. Okay, so now that's all done, and now that we have that all marked out, it is time to get to quilting. Just a little tip, when we started the tutorial, what we did is I showed you the drawing, which is half the drawing, and this is the center out to the right when it's facing this way. If you need this here just to remind yourself which way the curve is going as you quilt that, that's not a problem whatsoever. And then of course when we do from the center out to the left, then very simply all you do is turn it around so that you can see that the curves switch opposite. So again, it's always fine to have your drawing sitting near your table or up on an easel so that you make sure that you don't go the wrong way. So now what I've done is I've locked my stitches right in the middle because we work our way from the center out. And remember, my curves go out from the center this way, and then when we finish this side, the curves go out from the center the opposite way. So now once I have this locked, what I'm going to do is take my curve, I'm going to line it up, make sure to take into consideration my 1/4 inch hopping foot, and I'm going to make sure that it lands right on this registration line that we marked. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to thicken that line, so I'll do 1, 2, 3, and then I'll do one more because I want to do a 1/4 inch echo. And then I'm going to follow this back, and then I'm going to repeat that with the curve doing the same thing. So it's going to go out, and it's going to be 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to do that all the way across. Now I have my machine set at 12 stitches per inch, and I have my start speed mode, because I'm working on the Innova today, set at 75. No, I'm sorry, I have it set at 50. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, stop, right in that ditch, and now I'm calling the ditch the actual quilted line that we have there. I'm going to slide over. I'm going to use my hopping foot as a measurer, so right to the edge. I'm going to line this back up, and the edge of my ruler is going to go right to the pre-quilted line. One, two, three, and now I'm going to go ahead, bring that down for a number 4. I'm going to stop. I'm going to travel the ditch. Back to there, and now I'm going to switch it, and so now I'm going to go this way. But remember, we're not doing a different curve. The curve is still going to curve out towards the right side from the center out. So I line that up, make sure that I'm a 1/4 inch away from my mark up here. One, 2, 3, stop. Travel that ditch a little bit, just the amount of my hopping foot. I'm going to slide my ruler, and by the way, I do have adhesive on the back of my ruler. I have our um, handy grip tape, a couple pieces right on the back, and I also, just for a little extra insurance, I went ahead and sprayed a little bit of our ruler mate, or rubbed a little bit of our ruler mate on the back. That way there's ruler magic, I'm sorry, ruler magic. That way it's going to really hold as I work my way over. So now my ruler edge is right at the sewing line of the last one. So now I line that up. So that part's done. Now I'm going to follow the ditch all the way down to this next line. And even though we've quilted on that line, that ditch already, we're fine going on there because remember, we thickened that line to really make it pop. So now I'm going to line that up. And again, I am going to make sure, now this can be a little bit confusing. So what I'm going to do is have Rich come in a little closer with the camera. So when I put my ruler here, and when I pivot it up, what I want is the 1/4 inch away to be over here to this first line, not this line. That's going to throw your design off. So we're actually aiming for the early line. So I'm going to line that up. One, two, three. Travel my ditch. Give me the length of the hopping foot. I'm going to slide my ruler so my ruler edge goes right on that line because I have a 1/4 inch hopping foot. And this is when it's really important not to really slam the edge of your hopping foot up against your ruler because then you're going to be inconsistent with that echo. 1, 2, 3. Although I got to tell you, I'm a pusher. I push my hopping foot pretty hard up against the edge of my rulers. I'm just used to doing that. I don't buy into that. You shouldn't do that. Well, then why do you have a hopping foot for rulers? So I'm going to come this way. And now we're going to repeat that from the closest line there up to the next one. Okay, so we're going to put that like that. And we're going to go and remember your 1/4 inch up here away. I'm going to line that up. Now what I could do instead of struggling with this on the curve 1 is I could actually go ahead and switch to my Mista Curve 2 large because they actually are the exact same size. So I could go right in there at the front of my ruler and line that up and then 1/4 inch away there. That way it's not awkward and behind the hopping foot. So 1, 2. We want to remember the tools that we have for quilting, there are tools of our trade. You know, Rich always tells me when I start to get nervous about asking him for a new tool, you know, he was an electrician and he has over 200 screwdrivers. And he said, when you need the tool for the job that you need, even though it's just a little bit different, you need it. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, line that up. But what I want to make sure is that I'm fairly even. If you use this ruler, see, here's the thing. When I use this ruler right now, what I need to do is to really eyeball that that's even right there. Because before, what I would have, if I did it here, is this would go right to the edge of the stitch line, and I'm guaranteed that that's going to be a 1/4 inch away. And actually, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to do that. I know it's a little bit of an awkward view, especially with the video, but we have to take special things when we're filming. Down, touch 1, 2, 3. And now again, what we're going to do is we're going to continue all the way down creating that space. And we have our registration marks here. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then we'll show you what we're going to do after that. So now we are all the way over to the edge. Slide right down, hit that corner exact. Because remember, we started here and measured in 4 inches. And so we are going to hit perfect with that particular recipe. And now on this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide up the side, go right up to that line. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the downswing. And now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the upward curve. And you want to remember, again, what I do, especially the first few times you do this, is to make sure to keep that registration line on that first one, because it's going to be real easy for you to come back when it's time to do the other curve here, and you might accidentally stop here. You got to go to that first mark, because that is where you put your registration line. Again, I could use that one. For the first one, I'm going to just slide this in. It makes it a little bit easier. Right up into the corner. 2, 3. And do you notice how, and again, this is the reason that I have this center line here. Do you see how it divides that perfectly? It crisscrosses right exactly. If you're doing it right and perfect, which isn't always necessary, but if you're at least close to having the center crisscross right there on that center line, you know you're right, and you know you're in the right ballpark. Okay, so now I'm using my hopping foot as the measurer rather than switching the ruler. One, 2, 3, and I'm going to come up there. Okay, so now since we finished this, of course, what we would do is we would come back to the center, and now we would turn our curve the opposite way. And we would work the opposite way all the way from the middle to the left. And then once we get that done, we have some decisions to make. What sort of things do we want to put in here? And I'm going to show you right now, before I actually do this side, a few different things that I'm going to do in this particular quilt, just to give you a couple of ideas. Now, there is a myriad of options to go in here and fill in different things, but what I'm going to show you right now is what I'm going to do with this particular quilt. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to do curves all the way down in this space. And then I'll move and I'll do the same thing to do the curve all the way down to follow that arc all the way down. And I'll do the same thing up here. So up here, once I finish all these lower areas, I'll go up and I'll do the same thing up here. And then I'll make a decision about what I'm going to put on the inside of those spaces. So now what I'm going to do is take my ruler, stay right in that curved ditch, 1/4 inch. Again, I am using my hopping foot, so when my hopping foot hits that line right there, I know I'm right where I need to be. I'm going to line that up, and I'm going to use my hopping foot to make sure that, and I'm used to eyeballing. And again, if you don't want to eyeball, then very simply, you just kind of go a little awkward, and you would use your ruler, either your curve 1 or your curve 2, and you would simply line it up right on there, and you would 1, 2, 3, and then simply follow that ditch. When your hopping foot hits that 1/4 inch, you would repeat the same thing, line that up, and that tells me that I need to go just a hair further so that my ruler can hit that ditch. Now, again, if you're comfortable, you can actually put the ruler in front and just kind of judge your spacing that way. So either way works. Obviously, the second way is a little bit more for the experienced seasoned quilter that has a good eye. And the other thing to remember with these rulers, when you're doing this, this ruler doesn't have to be turned like this. It's the same arc, no matter where you're at on the ruler. So it's very comfortable to hold just like this, the end like this in that little spot. It's really wonderfully comfortable. And the handle really helps. It gives you just enough leverage. Slide down, hits, come down. 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to go 4 to come right up there. Slide down. Slide the ruler. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I want to double check, even though this is a small little space there, the eye is going to know if you should have had one more little guy right here in the tip. So I'm going to bring this down, and yes, I do need a little guy right down there. We don't want the quilt police to say, how come you didn't put the last one in? So now I would continue all the way over, putting this here and then on the other side. So now what I'm going to do though is I'm going to go ahead and I want to take you in and show you what I'm going to do in here. Next, what I decided to do was I am going to do a leafy lotus leaf rather than a feather. So I'm going to be using the double bumps. And what I did was, because I always want my teardrop to be about the same size, is I measured an inch, put a registration line, and I went ahead and I chalked that teardrop. And I would do that in all of these just so I kind of make it consistent. Because the petals themselves, they're going to be as consistent as they can possibly be. And once you've done a few of them, you're pretty much going to automatically be consistent. Now I am going to go ahead and I am going to set my machine at a higher cruise or start speed mode. So I'm going to go to about 450. Enter, because that's going to keep my quilting a little more smooth. And so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do my lotus. Swirl back toward the center, back. I'm going to double bump all the way up to the tip. Curve around. In the double bumps, I'm going to give myself a little vein, and then I'm going to come up on the other side, swirl in, because I want to get the bud done first, double bump, curve around, tuck it in, but I want to make sure, notice how I kept these fairly narrow. If I would have really swung out, that wouldn't give me enough room on these sides to put the other petals to make it look beautiful. Come up, give myself my vein. Now I'm going to come out and I'm going to open up that lotus. Vein, double bump, curve back, vein, double bump, curve back, vein, double bump, come all the way up, come down, vein, follow that down, and now come over to this side. Double bump, back, vein, double bump, back, vein, double bump, down, vein, double bump, come down the edge of that bud, vein, boom, lock my stitches, or I would just travel to the next one, but let me go ahead and move that out of the way just a little bit so you can get a visual of what that looks like there. And that combined with these is going to give that some wonderful balance, and especially with this negative space on both sides of that design. It's really going to make that border pop beautifully. Design. So there we have it. So we finished that, and then I figured you didn't need to see me do the other side. So that was kind of how we did it. And again, here is the border itself. Rich, can you get an up close on that a little bit more? Awesome. Okay, so that's how it turned out, and I gotta tell you, I think it looks amazing on this quilt. It brings this beautiful quilt. The quilt was beautiful already, the quilt top, but it really adds a lot to it, and it kind of takes the muted colors and kind of brings it to life, which I love. And then, of course, you can really see the effect. It's hard to see it on camera. Pull up the picture, the center picture, I believe it was. That way you can really kind of see what it looks like when it's up close. And it's just a wonderful design, I think, to use in any type of border where you don't want to be specific with feathers or you don't want to do something basic like piano keys. So I could have done basic piano keys, but I chose to do this. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. It was wonderful to have you here. We're looking to see if there are any questions. I think we answered a lot of the questions as we went along. So there we have it. And I hope you enjoyed this week's. So to answer a few questions that did come along, we are going to do a special tutorial within the next 2 weeks because I had my dear friend Mimi and a couple other friends who are struggling using the metallic thread. Now, I've done a couple different tutorials on tension. So now what I'm going to do is a tutorial actually at the machine using specialty thread and how to adjust and how to play with it to get it right. Then also to really focus on some of the rules using the different specialty threads. And that will include metallic threads, that will also include some of the specialty threads like the ribbon thread, Superior's, I think it's glitter or shimmer, the other brand of the ribbon thread, and then some of the other art type of threads I have in my stash. We'll kind of go through so that we can figure out what kind of issues maybe people are having so that we can get you using those wonderful threads. And then also I'm going to do a couple more borders. I've got a lot of things coming up this month, so just kind of stay tuned and check out the lives. And remember, if you're busy on Saturday afternoon, you can always catch them another time. We don't take them down. They're up there for everybody to learn. We want everybody to get as much as they can so that they can keep quilting. So, any questions so far, Mr. Ritchie? Nope, everything looks good. All right, everybody. Know you're loved, be safe, and take care of yourself and take care of each other. We'll see you down the road.